appreciate everybody coming. Everybody found a sheet on their chair, I hope. This one's not too long. It's not a 5-pager like some classes. I try to make it easy. It's just front and back. So I appreciate you taking the time to come. I know it's cold. Hopefully the roads weren't too bad coming in here. I know Everett was not good, but not impossible. So it is what it is at some point. So we're going to do berries today. It's kind of a crash course on growing berries of all kinds. There'll be plenty of time for questions. What I'm hoping is we can just kind of talk about one group, and then you guys can ask some questions. I'm going to move on to the next one, and we'll talk about some questions. The first thing we kind of go through is just some general information on kind of growing berries in the yard. You know, I'll speak for me. I think I've gone as a kid from having my parents' place where you had your garden and then you had a berry patch, you know, off to the side. I don't know that some people still do it that way, but I think in the modern landscape, a lot of this stuff is incorporated together. I've got blueberries all over different spots in my yard. I don't have a little row in the corner, you know, just to keep berries going. It's nice to go out in the summer and weed here and do some raking here and grab a snack. You know, I got one here and one over there and a couple here and a couple in pots. So, I mean, you can really locate a lot of this modern varieties, especially look like shrubs. I think there's some blueberries that we carry, you know, some hybrids of things you probably look at and think, I don't know, if it had berries on it, yeah, you know, it's a blueberry, but I think you'd look at the plant and think it was just a nice looking shrub in the yard. It's not quite the old blueberry farm, you know, 6-8 feet tall, doesn't have to be huge. There's a lot of great dwarf stuff now with fancier foliage, still excellent berries, maybe a little easier to tuck into the regular landscape. With all the stuff we're talking about today, we really need full sun. You know, we need sun. These aren't shade plants if we want to have success. Probably the one thing I brought up here is Arctic kiwi. We can grow that in some shade, but everything else I brought up here today, or we'll talk about, is going to be more for sun. So we need a good 6 hours of sun. Everything's going to need really good drainage except for the blueberries. It's kind of a little different one. Anyone else live in Everett? If you look across, I live right up above Lowell, and I look across the valley to the mountains east, and there's got to be 5 million blueberries on that new farm they planted a few years ago. It's beautiful, even in the wintertime. But that is wet. I mean, there's standing water down there, there's ruts, there's rivers, there's creeks, there's all the above, and they don't mind it. That's the one plant we can get away with, maybe with not optimal drainage. We can get away with a little heavier soil, and certainly a little bit of winter wet is not an issue either. So everything else though, raspberry, huckleberries, currants, all the other stuff we're talking about today, we cannot have that much water. You're going to get root rots and issues with a lot of the berries if they don't drain well. With everything in the garden, I think spacing and air circulation is huge. You know, don't try to pack too many plants into a little small area. You're going to run into problems 3, 4, 5 years down the road just as they're starting to mature and produce fruit. We need space for these guys to grow. If you have a small area, just get a little less plants. If you take something else out and add a little bit more, we can do it a couple ways, but we need to give these guys room to grow. It's not something we're going to pack in too crazy. Everything up here is not drought tolerant. You know, this is not stuff that we can plant and walk away from in the summer. I don't need to tell you about our weather. I think we have plenty of moisture through this winter or the spring. Some years it's all the way into July. But when the sun starts coming out, we do dry up because we are very dry in the summer months. We have to irrigate these berries. We're talking, that's production time. Blueberry, raspberry, all the stuff we're talking about today. If I let those dry out and I'm a plant, the first thing I'm going to do is abort the fruit. So you're going to walk out, your fruit's going to shrivel, or you're going to drop it, and now I'm going to try to preserve myself as a plant for the next season. Then I'm going to lose my leaves early, turn color, then I'm going to go dormant early. So try to keep them wet. You won't have to water any of this stuff here for probably 3 or 4 months until we get into May, June. But once we do dry out, try to get on a regular watering schedule and mulch, especially the blueberry side of it. A lot of mulch will really help you with the watering schedule. Now with the classes, we always put stuff on special. All the organic fertilizers, all we carry for the berries, that's on special today. If we talk about fertilizing things, who's got existing berries that are growing? Got quite a few, and who's looking to add kind of some new stuff? Probably everybody has some. I want some more too. So if we're talking about fertilizing, yes, we would feed something new that we put into the ground for sure. If we've got existing plants, we want to get on that schedule. Once here, late winter, I'd wait till it thaws, but typically it's mid-February, 1st of March, we get a heavy dose down to start the year off. one more time again, late May, early June. That should be plenty with a good organic fertilizer. We don't have to run out and pump steroids on these things every 2 weeks to keep them going. Keep them watered, keep them mulched properly. You got good soil, a good organic fertilizer like the EB Stone products here, that'll keep you happy. This is kind of a weird class where this isn't going to hurt anything. The fruitberry vine food, I could put that on strawberry, raspberry, currant, shrubs in my yard. It's really not going to hurt anything. You're never going to burn or damage anything with organic food. This is the class you kind of get double duty. Rhododendron food is specifically used for blueberries. Okay, so if you're looking to feed your blueberries, this is the one to get and the only one to get. That's extra acidity, it's got a little more sulfur in it. That's going to make your plants happier and give you all the organic goodies you need to have healthy blueberries. So I always laugh at this class because people typically load up on the rhodi food, for the blueberries, but I'd also use that on probably 2/3 of my entire landscape. You know, rhodi, azalea, camellia, gardenia. We could list all the acid-loving plants in our gardens, and that's the vast majority of what we grow here in the Pacific Northwest. So, good fertilizer saleable, 20% off, but make sure to grab some for your existing plants. And then if you're buying new stuff, instructions are right on there. They're going to tell you to add a little bit in the bottom of the hole, and then go back and feed those again as we get into summer. Again, I want to make sure everybody know the one thing we like about organic is not as water soluble, so the rain's not going to flush it through the soil. It doesn't go anywhere, and it has all the little extra goodies in there that you're not going to get on a Miracle Grow or a typical thing. If I'm going to eat something, I want organic. I mean, that's point blank. Vegetable garden, berry garden, fruit garden for sure. The whole yard should be probably organic, but that's a different discussion. But especially the edible things. So try to use those for your fertilizing. Now mulching, I kind of have as a separate. Now I mulch everything in my yard. You know, the beds, the berries, the blueberries, the raspberries, all the above. Certainly some mulches may be a little better for some things than others. I don't have a huge issue with bark. Who tends to use bark for a bark mulch? That's a great mulch, but just think of bark will turn into compost down the road, but you need to help it get there. And the only issue I have with bark is if I pile bark down on plants, I'm adding acidity, which was a great one for the blueberry. Sawdust and bark are the two most popular mulches for that, but we have to counteract the nitrogen deficiency. So if I put down bark real heavy, as that decomposes, it's going to take nitrogen out away from my plants. You're going to have yellower leaves, maybe things not thriving quite as much. So if I put bark down, when I tell people get a bag of organic lawn food and literally broadcast the organic lawn food down on the soil surface in a bed or wherever you're doing it, and then put the bark right over the top. That way you've got a little extra food in there to counteract that nitrogen draw out of the soil, okay? So bark's not the end of the world. Compost is bark that's been sitting for years, so you pay a little bit more, but compost would be typically neutral. So we would buy bales. We have that on special too. You'll see 2 bags down at the bottom here. Planting compost we use in planting in holes, and we use it for mulch. The pink bag is kind of the new generation of soils. If you see on there, I think it says azalea, camellia, rhododendron. It's an acid mix essentially. So that again, specifically for blueberries. I choose to grow some in large containers. That's my potting soil, not potting soil that's neutral, acidic potting soil. If I'm planting one on the ground, that for the blueberry again is going to give me all the organic goodies that compost would, but now I'm acidic as well. So my advice would be if I'm doing anything with blueberries, I'm going for the pink bag, whether I'm planting it in a pot, adding it in the ground, amending my soil, perhaps even using it as a light mulch when we feed. That's the way to go. If I've got existing plants, I've got the acidity I need, raspberries, everything else, the compost will be the one to add in. We mix that in about 1/3 compost, 2/3 our native soil. When we did our hole, mix all that up, use a little compost for some mulch on top, and off we go for the season, okay? So mulching. Now pruning, what we'll do this time of year is probably not the week to prune. It's been a little chilly. I doubt it's really going to hurt anything, but I'd rather have you guys play it safe than sorry and just not open up a bunch of fresh cuts for 18, 20 degrees a couple nights this coming week. I think after that, who knows what Mother Nature's going to do. We're probably ready to go for the season. I don't think it's going to get super cold again. But just keep an eye, wait a week or two. I mean, it's not the end of the world. We're not quite blooming yet. I'm going to talk a little bit specific pruning as we go through the groups, if that's all right to you, because I think a lot of people with existing plants are like, What do I do with that blueberry I put in 8 years ago? Or how do I fix the raspberry row that's creeping all over my yard? We'll talk a little bit about that as we talk about the plants. Like I mentioned, container growing. The biggest thing with that is we grow a lot of berries in pots. I mean, I do at my house. There's a lot of modern varieties of things that are just smaller, tidier for containers. But really watch your soil. Soil is everything with gardening, whether it's in the ground or a container. Get the right soil. Again, this is acid potting soil. It's one of these new hybrid soils, they call it, where I can use it as a mix or I can use it in the ground, okay? If I buy potting soil, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I found out years ago with blueberry, I'm like, God, the blueberry's just not really kicking and producing as much as it was because I used great organic potting soil that wasn't acidic. It's when I replanted them and went to the pink bag the next year, it was like night and day for production. So with blueberry specific, make sure it's acidic. Anything else I'm going to grow in a pot, we can probably get away with regular potting soil, which is pH neutral, so a little more balanced.
Will there be a conflict using that soil and then having the fertilizer that's
This won't provide you enough acidity. If I use regular potting soil, you're going to go in there and do what they've done for you and get a bag of like soil sulfur. You're going to start sprinkling that in once or twice a year to make sure that specific pot stays a little bit more acidic. Yeah, I mean, there's ways you can counteract it, but like I said, this is the new wave the last 4 or 5 years where they just get everything you need in a bag, so you don't have to go give me a bag of alfalfa meal and one of this and a bottle of that and all this and do it yourself. It's just like everything's in there you'd ever need. So a great way to go. Now the last thing there, well, the last couple things, always go green with natural stuff. I mean, if we're eating it, I'm not in here pushing any chemicals at all. I don't have to use them in my yard. You shouldn't in your yard, especially with edible stuff. Dormant spray is a way to start. If you had any problem with anything last year, did anyone have any issues with a specific berry? Everybody had great berries last year. Again, yes?
blueberries, they were having mummy berry.
Mummy berry, okay, we'll talk about mummy berry here. Rust is a big one, yeah, especially on raspberry a little bit, yeah, and then some of that. So if I had those issues, the two best pieces of advice I can give you, at the end of the year, always clean up your rows. I mean, I'm not trying to counteract Mother Nature. She drops leaves and make more soil and preserve, all that's fine. But if that plant was diseased in any way, I'm focusing on getting that debris out and throw it in the yard waste, let it go to the compost heap in the sky. They'll heat it up, kill the pathogens, and it'll make soil somewhere else. If it's healthy, leave it. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But if I had a problem, I'm gonna try to clean it up, and I'm gonna make myself a note to get out and protect my plant so I start the year clean. So these two are on special too. I don't find as many bug issues with berries in particular. Usually it's more fruit fly related, laying larvae when they're producing. This is not gonna do anything for that at all, to be brutally honest with you. This would be disease to me, the copper, liquid cop. So if I have a row of raspberries, a blueberry, whatever it is, these are what the commercial growers would be using as well on the natural side, non-systemic, doesn't hurt the eating or anything like that. I apply that on there in the dormant season, and I can use that during the growing season too. So I mean, that's a great choice. The liquid cop, the hort oil is organic listed, and that's bugs. So when I apply oil on something, it's running down and it's coating everything, twigs, buds, crotches, all the stuff in a plant. I essentially cut off oxygen and smother whatever thing is hiding on my plant, whether it's egg, little bug that I didn't see, that might get you. I think with the cold this week, we're probably gonna get anything that was outside will be fine. But both those I wanna emphasize, I like these two more than anything these days because I can use them nearly year round. It's gonna tell you on there, don't use when it's 90 degrees. How many days was it 90 degrees around here in the summer? And you shouldn't be out spraying in August anyway. It should be early spring. We get to summer, you should be out picking your berries and eating them. You shouldn't have as many issues to deal with. So as things pop up during the season, always take a picture, send a picture to me, bring your phone. Everybody's got a fancy cell phone. Get a nice clear close-up, bring it down. What's going on with my plant? The most common things, like I said, I've been hearing is the fruit fly issue. The last few years, the little flies come in, they're super small. You can hang traps and catch them. There's little pheromone traps. You can catch the she's before she lays all her eggs. You go out to eat your raspberries and you're like, well, that's weird. There's little white worms coming out of all my little drupelets on a lot of those fruits. So that would eliminate that main issue, I think, in the later in the season. Okay. So if we talk first a little bit of blueberries. Now I brought some up. We love our blueberries here at Sunnyside, so we probably have too many blueberries I buy in. I bet you we've got 20 kinds back there right now, because I can't say no to anything new either. So I love my blueberries. We get quite a few. The thing to keep in mind with blueberries, I think these days, is choice. We talked about, you know, my neighborhood, Lowell, looking out over the High Bush Blueberry Farm, the U-Pick Farm. It used to be, as a kid even, we got plants 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot tall at old farms. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want, but I hear from a lot of people that want something maybe just a little bit smaller, more manageable in their yard. So with high bush blueberries or northern high bush, we always have to get 2 varieties. I want to make sure 2 varieties or you're not going to get production. So the fancy tags on these are awesome these days. I can look at some hand models' hand holding a nice handful of berries on there. But if I turn that over, it's going to give me everything I need. How big is that going to get? How cold hardy it is? The biggest thing on there is highlighted, what season is this? So when does this ripen? Is it early, is it mid, or is it late? Okay? So when you buy your blueberries, it's not going to matter more than a couple weeks for each season, if that makes sense. They're like 2-3 weeks apart. And I don't know that anyone's picking, like, you know, I want to go out and pick my berries the first week of August. It depends on the weather. The issue with this is cross-pollination. If I have 2 lates, the bees are there, they mix my pollen, I get berries on both, right? If I buy an early and a late, that one blooms and is probably just about done before my late starts to bloom, and I got no berries on either, okay? I've found over the years, early's probably okay with the mids most of the time. Mid's okay with the late. 2 of the same season is ideal. We want to absolutely avoid early with late. You're just not going to get the bees to do the pollinating for you, and you're going to run out no berries for that year. Okay. You'll see a huge variation on size. Now me, I tend to like the wild blueberries. I like the small ones. They got flavor, maybe a little more complex flavor. There's nothing wrong with larger ones, but sometimes I think they're a little sweeter. Don't have the tang, and they're kind of mealy sometimes. If I'm baking and stuff, I'm gonna go buy a Chandler, a Spartan, a Darrow, something with a huge berry, maybe to do the muffins or the pancakes and things. If I want fresh eating, I got more small ones in my yard. But again, it's gonna tell you whatever your taste is. It's gonna give you a picture on there. This is a darker black one, different flavor, small, medium, large, very large. I think there's even a ginormous on there, and a couple of them out there now. But the big thing is pay attention to the season. If you're setting up some blueberries or you have one that maybe is not getting pollinated, let's figure out what it is and get you the right one to match with it, and then you'll get production on both of them, okay? So these are all high bush here. Maybe the one thing that people have asked for, and we got a bunch this year, is pink. Anybody growing pink blueberries? They're really fun on the fruit salads. So pink lemonade and pink popcorn. We got a whole bunch of both. Those were ones that we were lacking last year. They were harder to find, but I loaded up on both, and we got more coming throughout the spring. So if you want something kind of fun, it doesn't change anything. No, it doesn't taste like pink lemonade. Just call it that. But it'll give you a different color blueberry, which is kind of fun in the yard too, and they are delicious. So that's our high bush. Now I don't have all these in yet, but this is an example of this bushel in the berry program. I have some of this in my own yard. I've got quite a few now, actually. We'll have others come in like jelly bean, pink icing. You can see the differences. Hey, this has been sitting outside, nothing like, I don't put this in the greenhouse. It still has leaves on it, for goodness sake. So tend to be more evergreen. If when we get super cold this week, it'll probably turn more red, probably start losing some leaves. But it gives me a little bit more foliage for later in the season. They're still great berries, but much smaller growers. That particular one is one of the Sapphire Cascades. So if I had that in a pot, it would almost look like a hanging blueberry. Almost like, I've had a lot of people use those even in a hanging basket. You know, they plant it, it kind of grows up just a foot or two and hangs over the sides. You get to pick your berries on there, and everybody's happy. So that's a trailing one. Ones like jelly bean, the pink icing, silver dollar. There's other ones in that program that I would only get 2 or 3 feet tall. I've had 2 jelly beans probably 15 years now in 24-inch pots on my patio. I've never pruned my plants down. They're about that tall, and I get a massive amount of berries on there. Well, I should say not me, because my 2 sons eat them all, but I try to get a couple of these. But those are just a couple examples. Probably our two best-selling blueberries of all are produced by Monrovia, Bountiful Blue and Sunshine Blue. People wanted a 3-4 foot bushier blueberry, great flavor, nice size. Those two pollinate each other, so they put two in their yard. And again, more evergreen like those are. They tend not to go dormant quite as early. You know, I like both. I mean, probably top 5 fall color plants in the entire world are high bush blueberry. If I look at a high bush blueberry in the fall, they are spectacular. I can pick orange, red, yellows, burgundies, some great fall color, but I don't have leaves in the winter. Other people I hear, I want to lose all my leaves. Give me something more evergreen. Then we do some of the hybrids that way, okay? So lots of options back there. I would look at your space. You know, if I'm setting up high bush, again, there's some that are 4 foot, 5 foot, 6, 7, even 8, I know, for height. So look at your varieties, your heights, look at your space, and say, yes, I could put in 3 here. I got a nice room for 3 to develop down the road and get the appropriate variety, okay? Now, do we got any, so talk pruning. So, all of blueberry production, has anyone reading my pruning articles in the paper the last couple of weeks? My good, the bad, and the ugly. So there's an example of that. So if I look at a blueberry, this is a plant that blooms on 1-year-old wood. I'm trying to get people to think about their plants a little bit and how they bloom, because that dictates your pruning. So you can see my grower has pruned these, which is fine because I want secondary branching, but I can see flower buds on a lot of this 1-year-old wood. Can everyone kind of see those? So if I walk out in the winter and I'm like, well, my blueberry's too big, let me just shear it back. It's not going to kill your plant. It's going to grow, leaf out, but there goes all your berries for the year. So it's, to me, it's with blueberries, it's always late winter. It's never doing this necessarily unless something's way out of whack. It's all the way to the bottom. I'm looking at the base of my old blueberry and I'm trying to take the oldest wood all the way out. So I'm going to the bottom and I'm saying, okay, that huge cane's been there for 15 years. It's probably tired. Let me get my little pocket saw, my loppers, whatever your tool is, and take that entire piece out, recycle it in the yard waste. That's going to open up fresh wood coming off my root system when I keep that kind of fresh growth coming season to season. Is that making sense to everybody? I think a lot of people do a little bit of this, which isn't the end of the world, but you're taking off A, some of your 1-year-old flower buds. B, I'd always rather have a big, open, bushy plant that I can get at to pick. I have a feeling, you mentioned mummyberry, that's going to be a huge help to you, because when I have too much wood, debris falls in there all the time, I don't have air circulation, that's disease. I mean, that's when I'm going to breed things like mummyberry. If I get that wood out of there and open that center up, sun, air, light, all the above, I'm probably going to have a little less problems. Okay.
This may be pretty obvious, but when you're talking about old wood, you're meaning old wood where it doesn't have last year's bloom, it doesn't have the bloom on it.
Well, it might have a little bit of bloom at the tip, but it might be, I mean, if I've got an old high bush blueberry, it's probably the oldest, gnarliest piece. It might be all the way up to here.
Yeah.
I got a little bit of 1-year-old buds here, but I still got plenty on the rest. I'm following that, not in half, but all the way down to base and getting that thing out of there. That's a great way to go on blueberry. So we got any questions on blueberry? All right, raspberry's up next. So raspberry is a little bit different. Raspberries are all self-fertile. Let's start with that. I don't have to worry about this business with fruit and blueberries. I gotta go buy 2 varieties. You can get whatever you want. Raspberries don't need to intermingle. We could buy dwarf raspberries. We can buy old school raspberries. We can get any kind of raspberry. It doesn't change the nature of the way they grow. So who's got raspberries now? You probably got plenty of raspberries, right? Because they just keep coming, which is fine. But it's all about root system with raspberries. I have to have good drainage. I don't want clay. I see a lot of people raise up a row in their yard, a foot, put a border around it, and grow it in almost a large box. And that's fine too. You keep it out of the groundwater a little bit and keep the roots contained. If I'm growing raspberries, I need rows. I'm probably going to put a T-post in or something to give myself a guide wire between me and say that pole back there, so I have somewhere for my canes to grow and arch over and not just flop wildly across the garden. So I'm going to set up a pretty simple row, usually a 4 foot, sometimes you go 6, but 4 foot's good with me as kind of a support. Doesn't mean anything fancy. It can be if you want to make it all Martha Stewarty and go wrought iron or something fun, but just a couple treated 4x4 posts with a T and a couple guide wires is all you need to keep those things in a nice tidy row, okay? Now raspberries are, again, all about the root system. If I plant a row, you're gonna see canes popping up until you tell it not to. So either I put a wall in, or I walk around my rows once a year with a shovel and chop those roots. If you don't mind it traveling, let it travel. It's just gonna make a big thicket of raspberries, more for you to eat. I'm a little OCD, so I like my tidy row that I can walk in between. So I'm gonna keep my rows, try to keep them where I planted them originally, okay? So pruning a little bit. Now, the biggest decision probably with raspberries, we'll do the outlier first. Now this is a little guy, can you see in the front there? So this is one they call raspberry shortcake. This came out quite a few years ago. This has no thorns on it. I don't have to bleed when I'm picking my raspberries. So that is thornless, okay? And it's dwarf. It doesn't change the root system. I want to make sure that's clear, because I've had a lot of people buy these and love them and say, but it's growing everywhere. It's still a raspberry. So I grow this in a pot for me. So I get a nice sized pot. I can plant it in, say a 2-foot pot would probably last me 5-6 years in there. I would have a massive amount of cane, some great production. And then at that point in the winter, I dump it out of the pot, I chop it into quarters, I can give some to a friend, plant some more pots, move it around, do what you want to do. If I put this in the ground, it's going to travel just like any old traditional raspberry. It's going to spread on the root system a little bit. But I've only got a plant that's 2 foot tall. I don't have to deal with the staking, the caging, and the rest of it, okay? Much, much smaller, okay? All the rest of these raspberries here are kind of our older varieties that we've had for years. We try to find, I kind of like my old school ones, some like Grandma had, like Tulamine and Meeker. We get some newer ones like Crimson Night, really dark red blacks, got great flavor to it. The #1 raspberry in all existence that still is to this day, it's planted all over the world, is Willamette from Oregon. We always have Willamette in. And that is still the #1 planted raspberry across the entire globe. The most common one you see at U-Pick farms, the grocery store, all the above is usually Willamette. The biggest choice I have with these traditional raspberries is, do I want June crop? Do I want to walk out there and pick raspberries one massive crop, freeze them, save them, bag them, jam them, whatever you do with your raspberries? Do I want that, or do I want crop in June and another crop late summer, fall? Those we would call everbearing, okay? And it doesn't matter to me, they're both great to grow. I have a little bit of both in my own yard, but it probably depends on what your purpose is. I know a lot of people like to can or make jam or whatever it is. Well, you probably want to do one big process, get your work done for the year, and move on to the next. I like a little more fresh, so I tend to go more heavier on the ones that I get to pick a little bit longer in the season. It doesn't matter to the plant, but it's a huge difference in pruning, because we go back to that same, the good, the bad, and the ugly discussion. 1-year-old wood, what do I prune? How far can I prune? If I have a June crop raspberry, like Willamette is a great example, and I want to maximize my crop, and I have to prune a little bit over the winter to get them tidy, whatever it is, it's kind of like the blueberry, going to the bottom at the ground level and taking out the oldest, wildest canes and disposing of them is the way to go. I'm not walking in and cutting my row off like that, because all that 1-year-old wood that was produced last year, that's what's going to bloom in April, May, and give me my raspberries in June. Does that make sense? If I have a ever-bearing one, the old wood gives me the June crop, and then everything that sprouts up that spring hardens off quicker, and that blooms, and I pick again in August and September. Those are the two choices. So that's going to dictate my pruning. Yes, if I have a huge cane that's bleeding my forehead because I can't walk down the row, I shorten it a little bit. It's not the end of the world. You're not going to cut off all your berries. You still left plenty of wood. So I can tidy some, but the biggest thing to me that I don't see people do is attack the base again. The more I get cut out of there, if I had an old established row, and maybe some of you do right now, probably 1/3 of those largest, biggest, woodiest canes are gone here in the next month before spring hits. I'm going to the gun, I'm getting them out of there. I want to open up the row, more sun, more air, and encourage that plant to keep sending more suckers off my root system, because there's my wood for the next season. Is that kind of making sense to everybody? So raspberries, you know, you probably got to get a little bit of body armor on, some thick leather gloves, think roses maybe, and you won't bleed so bad. But it's pretty easy to prune out a row, but really get aggressive at the bottom. I wouldn't, if it was me, I'd go straight to the bottom first and go, I see what he means. I got 1,000 little canes coming up here. I can hardly see the soil. Let's get the oldest ones out of there completely. Now stand back and go, okay, I got some air, I got some space. Now I can go to the top and just shorten up maybe some of the really long ones that I can still use for that season, okay? So when you're picking your new ones, when you're putting in, just keep that in mind. I don't have to worry about getting 2 varieties. It's not gonna matter. You could plant 6 different varieties in the same row. None of that matters for the raspberry. The biggest choice to me again is, do I want June or do I want berries a little bit longer season through the longer summer, okay? Yes?
So if you're planting raspberry this year,
yeah.
Are we attacking the base first year, or?
Oh, you probably got 3 years before you're gonna do anything if you're putting them in. I will say this about raspberries, because I'm getting old. I got the white goatee. I've been doing this a long time. We used to buy the cheapest, little crappiest bare root canes of raspberries, you know, 20, 25, 30 years ago. I ended that because half of them won't grow, to be brutally honest with you. I see some nurseries still sell them. If they do, great, you know, but you got probably 2 years before you're gonna get anything off that plant. So we just get older plants. Every single one of these, you're gonna get a bunch of berries off this season. I mean, I don't wanna wait, I want snack now, you know, kind of thing. So they'll get better with age, just like all plants, but I'm gonna get production on this stuff immediately. Yes.
Okay, so I have the orange.
Fall gold, yeah.
And then other
Yep.
red berries that I bought.
Yep.
And they got really, really tall.
Oh yeah.
And so, anyway, so they got really tall.
Yep.
I cut them down.
Yep.
But then I saw a program on TV where a farmer was showing his kids how to do it, the base.
Yeah.
Okay, so should I be cutting them all down there at the base?
Well, again, don't cut don't cut them all down there to the base. What I'm saying is
Okay.
pick the old. How many years have you had yours in?
Oh, like 5 years.
Oh yeah, so you're probably ready. You know, a few should be coming out. You want to get them all out of there. But I need to leave. You know, fall gold is technically an ever-bearing. The second crop is usually a little heavier than the first.
Right.
So if we prune hard, you're probably not going to get a lot in June, but I get a little bit later in the late season. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't-
but yeah, all the way to the base. It's never chopping it off here or there. It's literally, if that cane's gone, I'm going to the soil level and I'm getting that entire thing out of my patch to open up for some fresh wood.
So pull them out?
Well, not pull them out. You don't need to
Low.
worry about digging it. You just want to cut it right at the soil level and just get the whole cane off.
And leave a few.
Yeah, just leave, you know, if I have 9 canes in a little circle, which is what raspberry does. I'm gonna go, okay, I'm gonna keep you. You got space. The rest of you are out of here.
I have a whole ton of.
Oh yeah,
They
yeah,
just
yeah.
need-
That's how raspberry grows. You got it. You
And
got
those
it.
orange ones, they're really good.
Oh, really super sweet. Yeah,
And they just keep blooming.
super
blooming,
sweet.
blooming.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, just to show you, I'm a couple. So probably for us, the most popular are Indian Summer and Heritage. The majority of the people I talk to want everbearing, and those are the 2 red, traditional, really good raspberries that just produce heavy crops all through the summer to the fall. So it's usually Heritage,
And the
Indian
orange
Summer.
ones, they'll do it all the way into fall.
Yep, yeah. And
Really
fall
good.
gold typically is a little bit later. And then we've got other great ones out there. Canby is almost thornless, another good one from Oregon. That's a great producer for the June time. I mentioned Willamette's heavy berry. I like the Crimson Knight's probably the best one I've seen in a while. Super dark red, really good flavor. They've all got a little bit different attributes, but just again, watch the season. When do you want to pick them, and then you can kind of pick your flavor from there. Okay.
But and
Yes.
they can
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
so they can be mixed though.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
You
mean,
got
so
no
I
issue.
can plant. If I were to get the, let's say the Crimson Knight,
Yeah.
I can put them right next
Put
to
a
some old
Crimson Knight, and then you got
everbears that I have there.
Add on to your row. It's not going to hurt anything. The only caution, I should say this because I don't really carry them for this reason. The only caution I would have is anyone do black raspberries. It's a little bit different than red ones. They call them black raspberries. They're really good. They're super disease prone. And that's the issue. I don't usually carry them around here because I've grown them before. They're great. There's nothing wrong with them. But if I had black raspberries, they're going over there, and I'm putting my red raspberries over there. Does that make sense? I'm never going to mix those 2 together. If I end up getting a dark variety, Keep them separate. So reds with reds.
Okay,
Yes.
and so the new berries, let's say, I'll say the Crimson Knight.
Yeah, yeah.
If I'm gonna buy those now
Yep.
and put them in the ground as soon
Yep.
as it's thawed,
Yep.
do I have to wait a whole nother year before I get berries?
No,
Will
you'll
they go
get
the first year.
You'll probably get a few this first season, not a massive. The second year, you'll really kick in.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, you'll really kick in. Yes.
So this is good. I've been cutting the old woody ones right at the base.
You're doing the right thing. See?
Right. I'm not sure I'm doing it at the right time of year because
Yep.
I tend to do it, you know, November where it isn't real cold,
Yeah.
December.
It doesn't matter if you do it. You know, wait till after we get a hard frost. You're removing canes. I don't
Yeah.
care how cold it gets. It's not going to hurt anything.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I think with berries and fruit, most people get to about now to Valentine's Day and they think, okay, let's get out and get that done before we bloom. That would be, but if you do it November, December, January, February, even up to the early March, it's not going to matter.
So my nice neat row,
Yep.
because it's a raspberry, is now a huge.
Oh yeah, 10
patch.
foot across. Oh yeah.
Right. it's
Yeah.
So besides thinning by cutting at the base,
You'd have to
should I actually be digging up some of those?
Well,
roots?
if you want to keep it contained, the thinning part won't do anything for you. You got to
Right.
literally get something and chop root
Right.
system, and then it's going to grow back again. I'll just say this for me: if I could do mine over again 20 years later, I would have probably jumped on the Magic Amazon website and found myself a 2 foot deep bamboo barrier, and then I would have set my row and put a barrier that you would never see in the ground that hopefully would keep those roots from taking off and going and going and going. Yeah, it would eliminate my digging every single spring.
Once they go into a big old patch,
Well, and if you just let it go, I mean, you could plant raspberries. If you walked away for 50 years, that would be your whole yard.
Right.
Raspberry would just never stop. Yeah.
but should I be thinning those ones out to just? I mean, I'm fine with them. I
Yeah.
just walk into the whole thing and.
Yeah, if you can pick them and you're okay, there's nothing says you have to. If you're good with the row now being a block,
Right.
let it have at it. You're gonna have a hard time probably getting in the middle to pick a little bit
Yeah.
at some point, but yeah, it's not gonna hurt the plant at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what was that red one called that you said was a really good one up
The
there?
everbearing, it's Heritage and Indian Summer. Indian Summer is by far our best seller. Yeah.
Indian summer.
Indian Summer Heritage are the two really traditional red everbearing ones. Yes.
I have grown the traditional raspberries, and I'm looking at getting the everbearing.
Yeah.
But what I've read is you actually prune them differently. But
Oh yeah. So again, it's not different pruning, but it's different timing. So if I have a June bearing, I cut off the oldest canes. I don't shear back because I need 1-year-old wood, or I got nothing that season. If I have everbearing, I've got some flexibility, if that makes sense, because I could still maybe do this if I wanted to. I sacrifice June, but I still have my second crop. Does that make sense? So you still thin from the base, nothing changes, but you could probably do a little more cutting back on those if you don't mind less berries in June. You're still going to get full production the late summer, fall. Yeah, just a little bit different. Yes.
Can you say anything in regards to wine berries? You never see them anywhere. I had a little one, and I know they have a lot of thorns, but I mean, you can
Yeah.
run your hand on and never get bit.
Yeah.
But do you have any tips on making their life better?
Well, I think food, a little extra food on those would help. Drainage is probably a little more important on those as well. I know I haven't been doing those for a long time, but
I
little
love them
good,
just because you got clusters.
good drainage, yeah, not a bad thing at all. But I'd throw a little bit of food on them. Again, you're not going to be shearing back. You're going to be plucking wood out if you needed to, out of the center all the way to the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, no different with that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I've had everberries.
Mhm.
Don't know the variety because they were.
You inherited them.
Yes. But I always, I guess, did what I thought was the same with blackberries. You take out the bearing.
The ones that
stalk.
produced, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, even when you're trying to do
Pick 'em,
that,
yep,
obviously the
yep.
new one's almost as long.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that still?
That's not the end of the
taking out?
world. I've done that before too, where I've been out picking and literally like even tied a little piece of flagging tape on certain canes that I was like, wow, that is really big, and I picked a whole lot of berries off it. That's the one that maybe comes out this winter. If you want to do it in the season, that's not the end of the world
Oh,
either.
okay.
Yeah. But I'm trying to get people to avoid with all the berries up here shearing. You know, I don't need to go out and cut this stuff in half because it it doesn't solve either of your problems that way. Either thin it out at the base or leave it and you're good with it to get a little bit bigger. Yeah.
So you don't have to, I thought you had to take out the canes that bear fruit that.
Well, if not every one of them, but if I had an old cane that now is 8 foot tall and it's arched out of my patch, that's the one I'm getting out of there, because I've got ones that already have replaced it. But it's not like one cane came up this last season, I got some fruit off and I'm going to cut it out. You got to let that develop for a few years and then it would come out. It's probably
It'll still bloom.
3, 4, 5 years, kind of thing before you'd be like, okay, you're tired, let's get you out of there.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, now a couple things. I'll mention strawberries real quick. We don't have strawberries quite yet. Does anyone grow strawberries? I'll raise my hand. I love my strawberries. Very easy to grow. We don't have them quite yet. It'll be a couple weeks, usually late February, 1st of March. We'll have a massive amount back there. We don't do bare root anymore for exactly the same reason. Like 50-50 live. And frankly, the price of bare root now is pretty much almost the price of buying somebody that spent the time to grow it in a 4-inch pot for you. So we carry a lot of strawberries. This is exactly like the raspberry, ever bearing or June bearing. With strawberries, I am all ever bearing. I don't make any jam or preserve, so I want to snack on berries literally from June all the way till we get frost. So I have nothing but ever bearing for me. You may want, again, a little bit more June to do something with, freeze or save or share or whatever, and then move on to the next crop. There's a lot of good varieties. All the stuff we carry is for the Pacific Northwest. You kind of got your California strawberries, you got Pacific Northwest strawberries. Some of the ones we find in the grocery store, not quite hot enough up here to get those growing successfully. But we have some excellent Northwest varieties. This is great strawberry country for growing. Murraysville's got the Strawberry Festival, for goodness sake, so we can do them all over up here. If you have strawberries, if you're going to add some, a couple weeks, we'll have them in. You could add some to your patch. If I'm setting up a strawberry area, I prefer mine raised. I've done them in the ground too. It's not the end of the world, but I got big, huge galvanized rings now. I like to keep them up off the ground a little bit. The rabbits are taking most of my stuff these days in Everett. So we keep them protected. I can put a little fence around it. I'm good. But it keeps them up out of the debris some. If I'm setting up my patch, I'm putting one of those little starts in about every foot. I can put them around the edge. I can make a pattern. You can do whatever you want in your area. But one every foot's plenty. We don't need to plant strawberries 6 inches apart. They're just going to run out of gas quicker. If you've had strawberries, they tend to grow pretty quick. We get runners, right? We plant what we call a mother plant. That plant blooms out this first year. I got berries right away. Everybody's happy. It sends a runner, and there goes another plant, and there goes another plant. It never stops, right? Just a ground cover. It's going to keep going. The mother plant will always run out of gas about every 3-4 years. Those come out entirely or need to be divided to continue to produce. So if you have strawberries, take a minute. I always do mine here February, early March. I'll take my 2 big circles of strawberries. I will clean all the debris, the old leaves, the moldy fruit, whatever's left. And all I want is that crown with that brand new little fresh tuft of foliage coming out. Everything else is gone. Now I don't have slugs, I don't have issues, I don't have as much disease, all the above. But if you take a minute, clean that patch, you're fresh for the season, and off we go. Now if I have an old patch I haven't touched for a while, you're going to say, mine just doesn't get as many berries anymore. It's just kind of tired. I only get a couple here and there. We've got to get those mother plants out of there and either replace them, or a lot of times if I dig that clump out, they come out very easy. I can break that apart and make my own little cuttings, and I can pop those back in. I do mine every 3 years, I'll be honest. I just did mine last year, so I'm off the hook for 2 more. So I don't have to do mine except cleaning here this month. But I will eventually mark on the calendar, be 2027. Guess what I'll be out doing in February? Digging all the patch up, laying all the plants out, putting the runners back in, and redoing my bed, and I'm good for 3 more years. Yes?
What do you do for your slugs?
Well, slugs, the only answer to me is never metaldehydes, never poison anymore. It's always Sluggo. I don't know who's using Sluggo or if you've tried it, but iron phosphate's the only way to go. Safe for the birds, safe for you, safe for kids, safe for everybody.
I tried some copper wire, but you can only kind of do it around
I was going to
plants,
say,
but unless you can do the whole
if you're in
thing.
a rim like me, I can put copper wire or copper strip around. That works very well, but Sluggo works for me every time. If I got anything I'm worried about slugs, next month here, this is where I'm setting the perimeter around my dahlia that hasn't come up yet, around the penstemon, whatever it is. Like, okay, I clean the debris out, I put my sluggo out, the slug has nowhere to hide, there's no eggs left in there, now he can't cross back in. And if I keep an eye on that, do it every 4 or 6 weeks or so here through the rainy season, then I won't have the slugs in that spot. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, you, I'm trying to clarify here. You said with the mother plant,
Yep.
It runs out of gas. And
3 years.
Take
Yep.
it out.
Yep.
But then you said you could take that and split it
I
up,
could
and then
literally-
it gets more gas?
Yeah, I could literally divide that up, little crowns. As long as I've got a root on there, I could put those back in.
Even though it's
Now that
not,
becomes a
hasn't
runner.
been doing anything.
Yep. Now it's
Really?
off,
Wow.
it'll take off again. Absolutely. Yeah, if I leave that alone, it's just going to sit there. It'll have leaves, but
So
you'll never
really,
get
you
any.
should never really have to buy strawberry plants because they should go forever.
Well, unless you're a strawberry addict like me, I always got to
Okay.
try a new one. So, there you go.
Okay.
So, I mean, I still go old school with most of mine. I love TriStar, which will have, you know, again, I'm all everbearing. Shucks and Hood, I mean, everything's going to have a north. You're going to look at the table and go, well, that's, you know, Bellingham, there's Oregon. It's all going to be Northwest. Everything's bred right around here for the strawberries. But look at your options. The only outlier in this discussion is all this new stuff. So companies like Bushel and Berry or these different hybridizers, it doesn't change. They're great strawberries, and I'll probably buy a couple when they come in this year. They're different flowers. We've had a lot of people like, again, maybe not strawberry patch. I got a pocket planter. I got a hanging basket. I got some other way I want to grow it. It's a great way to do strawberries and not in the ground. Those are the ones where you can get yourself a fancy flower. So you can get a double red flower or a rosy pink flower or this color. There's always new strawberries coming out. You would look at the fruit and go, yeah, it's a great strawberry. Here I am eating it. But when it's not fruiting, you'd be like, wow, that's kind of a little different. Maybe to some more attractive if it was in a hanging basket or in a planter or even in the garden kind of thing. So this year it's, I gotta remember the name because last year it was Rosy Bell, Scarlet Bell. This year it's Summer Breeze Cherry Blossom, and it'll be on my new plant talk. But the flower was like, wow, even if that didn't produce fruit, that's an awful pretty flower to grow in a little container, you know, as a hanging basket plant or a trailing plant. It looked pretty cool that way too, okay? So strawberries just a few weeks, but just remember, choose your June or your everbearing, and then keep an eye on your timing as far as getting them in the ground here pretty quick. Because if we get them in spring, this is not, I'm waiting a year to get fruit. You're going to get fruit now. I mean, you're going to be out there picking strawberries this June, and if you got everbearing, you're going to be picking them again here in the fall, and it'll get better each season, okay? So we'll do some grapes here real quick. I'm not trying to be the Debbie Downer here for grapes, but it's kind of a bummer for gardeners, to be honest with you. I jumped on the USDA kind of panel board for quarantines and trying to find out what's going on with some plants in our state with the WSDA, the Department of Agriculture. Nurseries don't have as much money as wineries. I guess that's the way to put it. So when there's ever an issue with, you know, the wineries don't want you as a homeowner to have grapes in your yard because they're growing wine grapes across the street, you're going to lose and they're going to win. I hate to be point blank honest about it. So I really struggle to find grapes. My sources are very limited. I have to have a lot of paperwork. I have to pay a lot of money for grapes these days because they all have to get genetically screened. They will not let you as a homeowner in our state, because we do produce a lot of wine. This is the same in Oregon, California. There's a lot of states like this where you can't, I couldn't tell you how many calls I get a week with people asking me for a grape. I wish I could help you. You're not going to find that anywhere. I wish I could help you. You're not going to find it anywhere. You could look online, and as soon as you put in your address to ship it to you, oh, sorry, can't send you a grape. You live in the state of Washington. So what we have is safe, I can tell you that. It may not be exactly what you want. We're not selling winemaking grapes because that's going to be even harder to find. But what we try to do is get a bunch of slip skin, seedless, grape flavored, fresh eating table grapes. I mean, we're not getting anything fancy. So we've got a really good selection out there right now, but I'll warn you, if you want to do grapes, grab them pretty quick, because when those are gone, I don't know when the next batch will be, because again, we're very limited on sources. These are all locally grown, things like Himrod, Interlaken, Canadese seedless. I mean, there's some great grapes back there, some blue, some red, some white, all the colors you'd ever want. But just get them pretty early here if you're going to do grapes. Now, I'll get you in just a second when we're done. So grapes are a vine. If you've seen grapes around, That's a big plant. Some people like the vine. It's a great foliage. They turn beautiful color in the fall. Grow it as a vine. You know, the grapes are a bonus. That's what my mother-in-law did. She put it up on her arbor at their last house and had a beautiful looking vine. She could have cared less to go out and pick the grapes. It was let the animals have them, and I like the foliage and I like the shade from it. Others, if we're doing it commercially, I can't tell you how many wineries I drove by on the way home this week all through the state of Oregon that look like bonsai. I mean, these are old grapes with huge trunks, excuse me, that are cut back to the nubs, because that's how we prune grapes. If you look at a grape, there's probably not many plants that look more dead in the winter than a grape, I hate to say. But I don't need all this tendril growth. None of that matters at all. If I look at an old grape, I need the old short pieces of wood. I'm coppicing that grape back to nothing. If I'm growing grapes commercially, you would be shocked how little wood is left, because that's the only point that I'm going to actually drop flower clusters, produce fruit, and pick, eat, make wine, whatever your thing is. So this plant here, I'm not going to prune these because they're young, but another season, this plant right here will probably grow 6 feet this year. It's going to send a tendril out, leaves, and it's going to grow and climb along whatever you give it to grow on. The fence, the trellis, the arbor, the post, whatever you want to do. It's going to grow fast, but every winter, late winter, I'm going to come back in and get rid of all that stuff that's thinner than a pencil and leave my old trunks and my short chunks of branches. Is that kind of making sense? So it really doesn't look like, oh, that's way too much I pruned. Just wait, because you'll see how fast they come out, they bloom, and then off we go again. It's just that cycle, season to season. Now again, if I'm trying to cover an arbor, a pergola, something in my yard, I'm probably not going to prune that hard, because I want the growth, I want the foliage, and I want to make a nice vine. We call the grapes a bonus that way, because it is a pretty plant, even if it didn't produce edible fruit. Okay, so try to get these early. I think we've got 7 or 8 different grapes back there, which is probably more than we had last year at this point. And there'll be a few more coming. I'm always on the look. I got a place I'm looking at down south now that I think has the proper paperwork and the certification that we can bring in some additional ones, hopefully here in the next few weeks. But it's just a tough gig. Like I said, the winery has more money than the nursery, I hate to tell you. So they're going to win the battle down in Congress on who gets to quarantine this and who gets to have that. So you had a question.
Are they pretty sweet?
Oh, very sweet. You know, again, some, you know, you get into the, you know, this one's got a foxy flavor and this one's got a touch of muscat and whatever. You can read the sign. They're going to tell you what's on there. Again, we had one wine grape, I think it was Cigarette, great one from Germany. I'm hoping we find that again this year. This is, to me, all about fresh eating. I can walk out, pop a grape in, slip skin, eat it, and I'm just like I would at the grocery store.
The ones my parents had when I was growing up, they were not sweet.
Not sweet?
And Mom would do jam.
Jam with them, yeah. And there's other ones like that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I get asked for Concord seedless grape like 10 times a day, because that's what everyone sees at the store. They want to make juice, whatever it is. That's the one we cannot find anywhere. I mean, I'm looking always, but that's a tough one to find these days. Probably the other one we get asked for is Thompson seedless. That's California AA. We don't have enough heat and we're a little bit too cold in the winter to grow that up here. So we would do Himrod, Interlocking, very close to that one. Nice green, slipskin seedless grapes. And then again, we've got some good red ones, a blue one out there. There's some excellent grapes out there for sure to choose from, okay? Now, last couple here, I brought up a couple huckleberries. Anyone growing huckleberries? So that's one of my favorites, a huckleberry slump dessert down at Anthony's, or a little on the ice cream. But this is all native. So if I want to go native, you know, Pacific Northwest, Western Washington, I can walk out in the woods here and find these huckleberries growing anywhere. So shade, sun, crappy soil, good soil, you name it, it's going to grow. We see huckleberries growing all the way to the ocean coast, all the way up into the foothills and the mountains. I mean, they really do grow well here. I think more sun is better than shade to keep your plant a little tidier. In the garden, if you got a little more sun, than shade is the way to go. There's a couple different options. So this is what we call Vaccinium ovatum. So this is our native evergreen huckleberry. Now I would find this all over the place. It's going to bloom here coming out of spring. We produce our berries. We're out there picking them late summer, fall. Little tiny, super flavorful, dark look like almost like a mini blueberry, but the flavor's excellent. So yeah, I got to get a whole handful for me to get a meal out of it, but they do produce pretty heavy. So this is our native evergreen. I just picked up one of these a couple years ago, and this came out to add to my huckleberry patch. You can't tell as much in the growing season. They grow exactly the same as the native one. This is one called Cascade Sunburst. So the only difference with this I've seen is the foliage. If I walk out and look at my plant during the growing season, I got some pink, I got some white, I got some cool variegated foliage, same berry, same growth habit, nothing changes. Still just like the native one is that. Now if we go a little different, some different type huckleberries, this is one of my favorite plants of all, if the berries a bonus. So this is what we call box huckleberry. This would be native over to the Appalachian states. But what's the difference? This is low, it's evergreen, beautiful red color, even in the cold of winter, it doesn't go dormant. But this is gonna form me like a foot tall, almost like a ground cover. And I get great huckleberries off of that. I think that's a really cool plant. They call that buried treasure. Not the pirate style, but hopefully buried, buried treasure. So we go through a lot of those these days for folks that don't want maybe a shrub, but maybe more like I call it a shrublet, something a little smaller. You can grow them in pots, you can grow them in a smaller garden, but same excellent huckleberries on those. I'm trying to find the native red one. Does anyone have the deciduous huckleberry? I've got one in my yard. I got it years ago. You see them out in the woods growing on the old nurse logs, the stumps everywhere. It's a really hard plant to transplant. Please don't steal them out of the woods anyway. It's not the right thing to do. Well, I'm trying to find some. The problem I'm finding these days is a lot of this native stuff is a lot on contract grow. So a lot of the counties, the state, the DOT, these places are just scooping up everything because they do a freeway project up in Mount Vernon. They need 10,000 of them, to plug on the Bark Hillside to reestablish a native area. So we'll get them eventually at some point, but I don't have any red huckleberry in. That's the opposite, much taller, deciduous. I like tangy berries, so I love those because they're a little more tangy, not quite as sweet. But certainly one we can do in shade as well. Mine is in deep dark shade, growing out of an old fruit stump I found underneath an old rhododendron in the corner of my yard. So huckleberry is a great way to go. I don't have lingonberries are in next week. If anybody likes lingonberries, that is very similar to this, if you ask me. But I'm going to have a big, huge red berry on it versus the huckleberry. So lower growing, evergreen foliage, very easy to grow. We'll have great lingonberries in. We get one called Red Candy. If you like your lingonberries, that's a great choice to do. Those will be here next week. And then a couple other different vacciniums we get in that I have in my yard. We get a Himalayan huckleberry in that's got really pretty kind of bluish purple foliage. Those will be about a month out. We'll have some of that in. And that just almost looks like salal. Anyone know kind of native or salal? Not quite as rampant as salal, to be honest with you, in the native. But it looks like that. It's got a great little berry on it. The birds usually get most of mine before, which is fine. But it's got really cool foliage. If you like a little different vacciniums, relatives of our native stuff, we do get some fun ones of those in as well. Okay. We got a couple left here, kiwis. I brought in a couple kiwis. Anyone growing kiwi vines? No one's doing kiwis. Nobody likes the land down under, right? Yeah. So we do some kiwis. I brought a couple in the front here. You'll see two there, one there. Again, fuzzy kiwi is what we find at the grocery store. If you go buy kiwis at the grocery store, we got like an egg-sized fuzzy kiwi, nice and soft. They're delicious. You cut them open. That's the fuzzy style kiwi. And right on the hardy line here, we have two growing on the property. We never lose them in the winter. We probably don't use the fruit as much as we should. They produce like crazy. But always all my life, we've had to have a he and we've had to have a she. We have to have them do their thing so we get some fruit on it. So it's really hard, I think, for some people. Like, I got a kiwi, I don't know what it is. Well, I can't tell you what your kiwi is unless we look at the flower. We go back to grade school. Do we have a pistil or do we have a stamen in that flower? You're never going to tell a kiwi apart by the leaf, the wood, the growth, none of it, just the flower. So if you've got old kiwis that aren't producing, you might be missing one of those two sexes on there, to be honest. The last 5 years, everything has changed. I don't have to worry about he and she anymore. It's all self-fertile. I don't know how they did it. I should probably ask one of the crazy fools that made them. But they've got he and she on the same plant now. So we could have fuzzy kiwi, one plant, intermingles itself, you got production on it. So we tend to get stuff like that. This is Kiwi Magic. We get one in called Sweet and Solo. They have bad names for plants, sorry. Sweet and Solo's out there. We got a great one called Jenny that just came out. Probably, I think, one of the better self-fertile fuzzy ones. So if you want to do fuzzy, now you're probably just going to get one plant, not have to worry about the he and the she thing. If you got an older one, try to find the flower here in April, May. Take a picture of it if you're not sure, and we'll figure out which one you're missing. We can always order you the other sex, and then you got your production back. Okay, so that's fuzzy. This is what we call grape kiwi. Same flavor, hard skin, much smaller, like the size of a grape. That's hardy down to like 30 below zero. So if I'm worried about growing kiwis and I'm up in the hills or I'm cold hardy, we would go safer bet and get the grape kiwi. They're still delicious to eat, self-fertile again. We don't have to worry about having the two anymore. And we have a little bit hardier specimen. The last one here is these two, and I still have to get a he and the she on those, but that's what we call Arctic kiwi. So we would grow that in Siberia, you know, Alaska, 40, 50 below zero hardiness. No issue ever killing that with any amount of cold. That's probably not as much the small kiwi again if we produce fruit, but that's a pretty foliage plant. The he, it's the opposite of everything in nature to me. Usually it's the she that has the prettier flower, the prettier foliage, and says, please come pollinate me. This is the opposite. The he has got all kinds of pink and white variegation on the leaves and shade. So a beautiful vine to grow, even if you don't care about the production on it. And if I add a she in there, like Red Beauty, now I've got my production on the she, I've got the really cool foliage that I'm looking for on the he, if that makes sense. So Arctic kiwi, grape kiwi, or what we traditionally call hardy kiwi, then we have the fuzzy kiwi, all right?
How big will they get?
That's a big plant. So I'm not gonna lie to you, if I grow kiwi, we're not gonna get a little, you know, little two by 3 trellis and say, well, I'm gonna grow a kiwi on there. We're gonna have like probably a 20, 30 foot fence line or an arbor or a pergola. We can prune it just like the grape. It's got cool leaves too, and we can do what we want for pruning. It's not gonna matter with that. But I tell you, my parents had kiwi at our house growing up, and I think it was up 2 stories on the deck and then covered the entire railing about 70, 80 feet across at some point down the road. So that's a big plant. Yeah, like wisteria. I mean, it really is. Probably grape, wisteria, kiwi are about as aggressive vines as you would ever grow in the yard. So for me, I would not put it on my deck or my railing or my fence, maybe even perhaps if it was a nice fence. I would probably have a 4x4 post structure out in the yard and just let it cover it and do its thing. Or chain link fence, you know, something that would support it long term. I could certainly grow it along that in a nice sunny area as well.
So will it a spalier?
Spalier, well, you're going to be on the spalier, you're going to make a wall. I mean, it's going to keep going and going and going.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not kidding you. Grapes fast growing. If I gave some food on that kiwi the first year in the ground, I wouldn't be shocked if that grew 8 or 10 feet this season. I mean, it's really going to take off. Yeah. Then next year we cut it back a bit and it gets even bigger. I mean, you can still prune it, but it's going to put on a lot of growth. Okay?
And when can that be planted?
You can plant again. We're frozen this week. You can buy plants. Everything's on sale today. Take it home. Just leave it. You can leave it in the garage for a couple nights, whatever. It's going to end here this week at some point. As soon as the ground's thawed, pop them in the ground and off they go. So you want to plant them as soon as you can. Absolutely. Okay? Now the last couple here will get you out of here. So currants, we do a couple of different currants. I don't have white yet. I've got black. Oh, there they are right in front of me. I've got black and red starts. We'll have bigger ones in here pretty quick too if you like old currants. You know, traditionally it's choosing the color, white, red, or black. It's a pretty good bush. You know, as far as bushiness in the yard, don't think you're going to keep a currant in a little 2-foot container long term. That's a pretty big plant. These all produce on 1-year-old wood. So again, we're not going out and shearing our currant back. We're taking old wood out of the middle, or we wait till we pick them and harvest. Now we can maybe cut down a little bit more and still have the rest of the summer to regrow, set buds, and then we're good again for the next season, okay? The brambles is the last one there. You know, blackberry, boysenberry, loganberry, my favorite's marionberries. All the brambles are those types of creatures. And I'm not talking about the non-native blackberry that's taken over our state. That doesn't even belong here. That's Himalayan blackberry that should have never been here. Our native blackberry is trailing on the ground. The Cascade blackberry is much different. These are all going to be gourmet blackberries. I'm not going to lie to you. If you're into berries like me, and I love my blackberries, we're getting a way bigger fruit. The stuff you get at the restaurant, you know, using in the desserts, they're easy to grow. And a lot of the stuff now is thornless. This is one plant that man has been able to kind of get the blood out of the picking process a little bit. So we have some out there that certainly you can look at it. Oh yeah, that's got thorns. Marionberries, there's no thornless one. I'm still waiting for it. But lots of good blackberries don't have thorns these days. So the bramble is a little different. It grows kind of like a raspberry, but then it's really not. It's a little bit different than those. If I'm going to set up any one of those types of things, a bramble in my garden, I'm probably going to have maybe a little lower post, probably 3 foot is plenty, and run my wires to train them on. But with all these plants, we have what we call floricanes and primicanes. So if I walk out and I pick a bunch of blackberries on a cane, that cane's out of here. It's done. I mean, you can prune it off after you pick it. You can put a little flag on it. You just take it off, because what grows this year, okay, is going to be my flowering cane for next year, and that's never going to end. That cycle. So if you pick a lot off a cane, you could cut the oldest one out when you've picked it, because it's done and it's over with, and I want to get more again off the root system. Is that kind of making sense? So we're always just playing that kind of cycle through. It don't get nearly as big as raspberries, you'd think, because we see them all over the place here covering yards and woods and all the rest of it. That's a little different creature. If I don't ever prune my blackberry, that's probably what's going to happen to all of them with time. It's going to arch over. As soon as I reach the ground, it's going to reroot, and then it's going to reroot again and again and again, and you're going to have the mess like I see driving around everywhere. But this stuff, I'm telling you, different. No, nothing wrong with eating those blackberries that we have all over the place. They're good. This is a whole nother level. You know, a lot much bigger, a little bit better flavor, all the above. And doing that cycle of pruning is going to keep your rows much more manageable. You won't lose control of them that way. Okay. So just a couple, like I mentioned, marionberries. If the bear doesn't get all my rows down to my parents' place, I'll get my marionberry pie this year. He ate the whole damn crap last year. I got him on video camera to prove it. So marionberry is always my favorite. It's that special blackberry. I've got Columbia Star. There's a whole nother series out. Columbia Star, Columbia Giant. Again, local, good blackberries for the Northwest. I don't have any thorns on that. Look at that. I don't have to bleed when I pick it. Those are going to be thornless varieties. We've got thornless boysenberry, if you like a little bit different. I've got tayberries coming in. I have loganberry finally this year. I haven't been able to find those for a while. There's a lot of fun brambles that we can grow, and certainly if you've been looking for a specific variety or a type, leave your name on the wish list, because I do my best to try to find all the cool brambles we can. Yes?
Do you have anything to say about those ground cover? They're not really raspberry, but they are raspberry.
Yeah.
They have their gold.
The little Arctic raspberries. I'll be honest, I love them. There's nothing wrong with them. We got them in every year. Nobody ever buys them, so I stopped buying them in here.
Wow, it's too bad, because you can put them.
Oh, they're
anywhere.
awesome. Yeah, you can find. You know, I'll speak for me. I'm not a huge internet plant shopper. I mean, I run a nursery, so I can find most everything I want around here. But I watch different websites. Edibles is the one thing maybe online that if you look around, you can't find something at a nursery. Rain Tree's very good. They're in Washington. I've used them a little bit over the years. And there's a great place down in Portland called One Green World. It's an old wholesale nursery that I knew called Northwoods. And again, if you're looking for different stuff, that's who has the Arctic raspberry she brought up, or he has a specific variety of quince or something kind of fun. Again, Northwest kind of grown stuff, not anything from Colorado or the East Coast. It may not do quite as well. Okay. There's a couple on there to look at the end. I don't have honeyberries, goji berries, goomies. We get elderberry shrubs in. When we get a lot of other berries in that we could talk about in this class, They'll be here at some point pretty quick. Just be careful with some. A lot of people 3 or 4 years ago wanted honeyberries. Anyone know what that is?
Yeah.
Haskell's. They look like oval blueberries. That's a huge thing, eastern Washington and up into the plains in Canada. It's much colder there. They don't get the rainy weather. You're really going to struggle with powdery mildew down in our climate. We get too wet a spring to grow some of that stuff. That's why I hesitate on the gummies, the gojis, the honeyberries. I'm not saying you can't grow them because I've seen it done, but we got to be very careful where they're located. We got to keep sun, we got to air. We probably have to do a little bit of spraying to keep them without issues. Yes.
Yeah, back on your blackberries there. Now, thornless ones, do they, like the raspberries, do they have roots that travel?
They do, but it's not. Raspberry to me is a little different. It's a whole nother level of that. I'm not going to tell you that this isn't going to sucker and throw canes up, but I've grown a lot of brambles for years. We had a place in Cleveland, we had a zillion of them over there too. It's not unmanageable like it is to me with raspberries. You really got to keep up if you want to keep your raspberries in rows.
Right.
This would be probably a third less work, you know, than doing it that way. I mean, you're really just not having to do as much. And again, if I follow that, to me, the basic principle, I picked you, you're gone. I'm done. You know, now I've got my wood grows up and now I'm ready for the next year. And then the next year, it just never ends. If I walk away for 5 years, yeah, you're probably going to have, well, I don't want all those canes coming out where I didn't want them. Now we got to go back, do a little bit of pruning, and then off we go.
Gotcha.
So if we had a 5-foot row for the brambles,
Yeah.
how many could we put in there?
Oh, if you put 5, usually starts like this, you know, foot and a half apart. I'd probably say you get, you know, 4 or 5 plants in there. Plenty. That doesn't sound like much, but that'll give you plenty of production down the road. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Kudos. I really enjoy and learn a great deal from your articles in the Herald.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to make them kind of fun here and there, but get you a chuckle once in a while. But
Doing well.
the pruning one was, I instantly thought of Eastwood. I had to go with the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I thought we could turn that into like a 10-part series. I was like, this could never end. But I'm, you know, again, I try to get the juices flowing, hopefully, or get you thinking, because I think, you know, to me, you guys come to a class, you obviously care about plants. You care about your yard. You want to eat something with this class in particular. So it's like, all right, well, if you're going to do this, maybe think for a minute before you prune was the whole point. And it's no different with the berries. If you know, to me, the key of that whole thing was old wood bloom, new wood bloom. The pruning, the rhodie, the berry, don't care what it is. If you can understand how your plant grows season to season, that dictates the pruning. It's like, whoa, I can't do all that because I got nothing next year. Let me do it this way, because there's an easy way to do it. It's not more work. I think it's easier because you're going to have a nicer plant long term too. So yeah. Yeah.
What's the difference between the Monterey oil and the horticultural oil? I've been using Monterey and,
Yep.
and liquid cop
Yep.
on my trees. Is there any
Yep.
difference?
No, this is horticultural oil. So there's a lot of form of oils that this is, again, the reason I bring these two in the winters, because these are superior dormant products that I can again use during the season except for the heat of the summer. If I go by, I use a lot of neem oil for me. I'll speak for me, I'm organic. I can't use neem oil in the winter. So I have to use that during the growing season only. So if I want to get an oil down on some plant that I had issues with last year with bugs, that's what I'm going to go to in the winter. This to me is by far more important around here with our wet weather. Disease, more disease. Whether it's fruit, berry, lilac, you name it. Rose is a huge one. I'd be doing all that stuff this month right now so that I start clean in the season. Now I can manage it with neem oil or something very natural and not have to go to what I call murder, death, kill. I know you shouldn't have to use that stuff anymore.
So you're saying you wouldn't use the Monterey oil in winter?
No, Monterey horticultural, this is what that is.
That's the same thing.
Yeah,
Basically
yeah, this is Monterey horticultural oil.
I got you. Okay.
There's other oils in there. We've seen all season spray oil. You could use that in all seasons, obviously. Neem oil is the main one that I think a lot of gardeners have gone to because we use it here all over the place. House plants, everything is neem oil for us because it's natural, it's safe. You know, for you guys to take a plant home, it's not killing bees, all those reasons. I just can't use it in the winter. It does nothing in the winter. So once we leaf out, weather warms up, April, May, June, all the way through the fall, it's neem oil. But in the wintertime, I can use that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
for
you.
sure. And again, before I cut you out, so 20% on all that stuff, All the food's 20%. All the berry plants are 20% off. You got till I think end of the day Friday. You got all week to use it. And then the soil, I'm running that compost on special all month long because we try to get everyone to take home compost that we can because it's great soil. So that's on buy 3, get 1 free the entire month. Those are the bags. If you're a compost hoarder like me, you get the bales, and I probably have, but I still got 12 behind the house. It'll all get used up here this month, and I'll go buy 12, 15 more of them. So compost is a good thing to kind of stash around. You know, whether you're planting, mulching, all the above, you never could have enough compost. So being on special, that's a great deal too.
Is any of that dangerous to dogs or cats?
None of it at all. The only thing that we have here, and I go back and forth with the staff and frankly our customers, are those, or we don't do cocoa shells for that reason anymore. The chocolate stuff is not good for the pets. And sometimes the hazelnuts may be a little different for some people too. It's not poison for either one of those, but I've heard people that dog like to eat him, got kind of sick and made a mess in my yard. It's not going to get harmed long term, but compost is never going to hurt anything. Absolutely.
And the ones on the table also?
Same with the food, yeah. I mean, again, my one of my last dogs years ago decided to eat a whole bag of bone meal in my garage, and his stomach didn't do very well for a couple days, but it wasn't like I had to rush him to the emergency room and do anything. It's just like, all right, bud, don't do that again. You know, kind of thing. So we keep the fertilizer up a little different spot now. Yeah. But no, all organic. That's what I'm saying. I ran, I don't know if you guys remember White's, you know, down Linwood. I ran that place for like 19 years, and we had organics. We had a little bit, we had probably too much stuff down there. This place is awesome because it's all about plants. We're kind of rustic chic, but it's really about organics. I mean, we really do focus on, I'm pretty happy that I've gotten this place down to really organic fertilizers, except for one thing we do with our hanging baskets and stuff for flower power, and then soils are all organic for sure. That's all we carry anymore is organic soil. So there you go. Yeah, so we got any more questions? Look at that, it's getting warm in here.
Yeah, the sun just
Yes.
came out. I just noticed.
It sounds like there's no raspberries that aren't running.
No raspberries that aren't running. I can tell you from asking and talking to people at plant geek shows I go to, it's getting worked on, but I don't know that man is going to be successful in figuring out how to make a raspberry not run.
In our life.
But I said that with other stuff. I was like, they'll never get thorns off that, and they did. So at some point it may happen, but there's nothing right now. I mean, that's why I brought this up, because when this came out, we sell hundreds of this raspberry a year. Everybody loves the dwarf. They don't bleed. There's no thorns. It's got great berries. It's only a June crop. I want to make sure that's clear. I don't get double crop on this little raspberry shortcake. But that's the one everybody thought, oh, it's a dwarf. It won't ever run like that. I'm like, it's still the same idea. So, because the first year they came out, it was probably, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago or so now. We literally just plant them in pots. I want to see what it does. So we had a couple pots around here, just a 15-gallon, put one of those right in the middle. How long will it last in there? And it's like clockwork, 4 years. And then it's root bound, it's nothing but roots. We dump it over, we take a spade, we chop it into quarters, and then off we go for another, 5 years. But it will run out. If it's in the ground, not crazy, it's not gonna pop up, like bamboo. It's not quite that crazy, but you are every year just gonna get bigger and bigger and wider. Yeah, there you go. All right, yes.
On the blueberries, as far as putting netting over them
Yep,
to
yep.
protect them from the birds,
Yep.
when should you put that on so that you don't stop the cross-pollination?
Yeah, no, wait till, you shouldn't have to put any netting on. I don't even think you'd be worried about it till even the early cropper stuff. If we have a killer spring, you might be mid-June before you're gonna be producing. I'd say if you waited till mid-late May, I don't think, it's not something I'd run out and do in April. I'd wait till mid-late May. Just be careful. This is something I got into with my dad the last couple of years because he ended up building like a veritable fortress around his blueberry patch. It's got poles. I'm like, how can you even get in there? He's got like 4 layers to peel up that he can sneak in and pick. But just be careful of the netting size because nothing's worse than walking out and seeing a bunch of birds stuck in your netting. I mean, that's the one thing that bothers. So get really, really small holes that they don't think they can get in and then get stuck, and then which you had some of that down there. So.
Okay.
So try to get it done and and it's worth getting. I mean, we always joke about, I love my birds, but cherry trees, yeah, the birds are probably going to find them. Blueberries, yes, they're going to probably find them. But we can do a little bit to protect. I've had really good luck with a lot of flash tape You know, I used to, I don't know if does CDs even exist anymore? Does anyone have a CD left?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's all fancy iPhone. I got a bunch. I take a flash ribbon and I go tie a CD out around that area, because if it flashes light, it really does help with the birds. Is it going to work forever? No. Is it probably fail safe? No. But I feel better about hanging CDs than sometimes doing the net. So
Yeah. Great. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. All right, let's go. We got sunshine out there. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
2 weeks. I'm kind of trying to. We're not cutting classes down because I'm going to be recording a lot of stuff here. I'll tell you, I'm going to try this year to do a bunch of like 5-minute videos. So like you may down the road here, you're going to see like, what did he tell me about pruning my blueberry? I got a fancy head camera now. I'm going to be over like pruning a blueberry for 5 minutes and you can watch it. That kind of stuff's coming soon. For the in-person classes, there might be a little less quantity this year because a bunch is going to get recorded and posted at different intervals all through the season. So our next one's 2 weeks again, roses, which will be a great rose. It's a perfect timing if anybody's doing roses. We'll have all that on special, and we'll go through really getting the roses started off the right way for the season, because late February is just as important of any time of the year to me for roses. That'll kind of get you going for the season. So hopefully we'll see you at rose class here in 2 weeks.
What about
Thank you.
Yeah.